Let's first start with one story that is developing on the stock market, and Danex, Itin Drugs and then Starwin finally have listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange after the merged entity got the approvals from the respective regulators of the capital market. We get any more details about what they are bringing onto the market and actually what the chairman has been telling us about what this means. That is Nick Amatefu. He's the chairman of the merged entity and has been talking about what this means for them and what is next.
We should be. We were looking at the English speaking, so that's Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, yeah. And then we hold Nigeria as a very important but tough market. So you go there only when you have well thought out strategy and analysis on the risk side, yeah. Because Catapreco has been there with disastrous results, yeah. We also have had appointed people there before in Nigeria, but had not done very well. We have sold to the Anglophone, to the Francophone. We've sold to Togo. They didn't pay. They had no money. So, and the Francophone countries have a very peculiar way of buying from France. So that even if you can sell to them today, they go through France first. Yeah. So in that regard, the Francophone is way down the line. Anglophone, without Nigeria, is something that we're studying now. But and then Nigeria is there. We may have to start by selling in cash, no credit, going forward. Yeah.
Let's talk about finance. And the Bank of Ghana has begun a nationwide program aimed at sensitizing consumers of financial product and service offerings on their rights and responsibilities. It rolled out the program today, first targeting the police service, making the stop at the Accra Regional Headquarters. Second Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Elsie Awaji, has more details about this program and what they intend to achieve as the days goes on.
We have scheduled actually for key stakeholder groups throughout the country. One, to educate them and sensitize them as to their own rights and responsibilities as consumers of financial services. And secondly, being the police service, to also engage them as key strategic partners as we set out to ensure integrity in our financial system. And so we have had a long-standing relationship with the police, where they have been the ones that have helped us to conduct enforcement actions against financial institutions that have violated the laws that we superintend over. It is now time to re-engage them, particularly after the banking sector cleanup, to ensure that we're on the same page with them and that we continue to conduct surveillance over the financial institution to weed out any behavior that is unlawful, that is unethical, and we would like to ensure that the police service understands our expectations in this process as we engage them, particularly in the area of unlicensed financial service operations. Financial services are licensed activities, and we expect that the persons or the institutions that engage in them are licensed as the law requires them to do. And if the police service find anybody that is engaging in financial services, in particular taking money from the public or promising loans from to the public that is not regulated by us, that they report this and actually help us to enforce the laws to stop that from even going any further. We've seen too many fingers burned in the recent past in Ghana. We've seen too many people lose money, and it is our definite hope that that doesn't happen anymore. And we are doing all we can to engage key stakeholders like the police service to ensure that we're able to mobilize ourselves to enforce the law strictly sooner than later. We're talking about here with the honorable men and women of the police service is really a customer bill of rights. That's really what it's about. So it's about educating them on the rights and responsibilities of customers. And we do have protocols in place that clearly establish for financial service providers what it is they're supposed to do in terms of behavior towards their customers. And we do intend to do a lot more education. You may have seen that we have advertised a hotline, a consumer complaint hotline. And this is really one of such mechanisms where we tell the public, if you do have problems with your financial service provider, here's a line you can call for redress. And we have also started a massive amount of education in terms of what your rights are as a consumer of financial services, but also what your responsibilities are. When you borrow, you pay back, for example, right? It is your duty to understand that it is your duty to ensure that you understand, for example, what the pricing for the loan you have obtained is. And if you don't understand that, you go back to verify.
Well, prices of petroleum products are expected to witness some marginal increase at the pumps that is later this week. Now, this is based on data we have picked up from industry players as well as our projections. But what are the reasons for this increase, and would the oil marketing companies finally adjust prices at the pumps? Duncan Amoy is the Executive Secretary of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, and he joins us in studio for some quick analysis on this issue. Thank you so much, Fred, for joining us in our studios Marketplace.
Thank you, George. Thanks for having me.
And one question that I've been asking myself is whether the oil marketing companies would finally adjust the prices at the pumps.
Well, George, let me say Happy New Year to
Thank
the
you.
oil marketing companies particularly. The BDCs have equally stuck with Ghanaians. If you recall, the first week of January, the anticipation was that prices were going to go up. We had the chance to call on government to adjust some of the taxes, particularly the price stabilization and recovery levy. And government, being magnanimous, heeded. And so the NPA dropped on the PSRL to zero, from 14 pesos to zero. And that was able to cushion the oil marketing companies from going up by almost 20 pesos. And so once they did some 15 from the government point, it means that they still had some hits that most of them were absorbing. Fortunately, as we speak, diesel is not so good, but PMS is a bit okay. And so as it sits right now, I can confirm that the little interaction we've had with a cross-section of OMCs, from tomorrow morning, evening, I'm sure a lot of them would have gone up by between 7 and 10 pesos.
Are they going to factor in the old one that they didn't, as well as this new one?
Yes, I can confirm that whatever hits they were taking, together with whatever variances that have also accrued over the past 2 weeks, they would do something quite reasonable for everybody. But for some interventions that we occasionally do put in with them, I'm sure we could have done about 15 pesos. But what I'm seeing with a lot of the major ones so far, it might not go above 10 pesos tomorrow.
I've engaged some other oil marketing companies. Now, let's talk about the GOIL factor, because they are a major player here. Some of the OMCs have said that because GOIL hasn't moved, we also don't want to move. Do we get the indication that finally the biggest player in the industry believe that, okay, it is the right time to adjust prices and therefore I have to do it?
You see, George, petroleum prices are purely numbers, a numbers game. If you let 1 peso go, it has a way of hitting your revenue or financials. GOIL, because it has the largest volumes on the market and also the largest number of outlets, has become more or less the benchmark for everybody. Now, the GOIL management, I can confirm, are too pro-Ghanaian oriented. And so most of the time, they are even more worried about prices going up than we at the chamber.
But they are not for the Christmas. They are not they are a private company. They are supposed to make returns for their shareholders.
You see, George, for me at COPEC, If God decided to reduce prices for me tomorrow morning instead of going up, I'll clap for them.
But in the long term, they are hurting the business.
They should do their numbers. And again, like I said, because they have the largest volume, right? Somebody may have to do a margin of 10 pesos to survive. God can decide I'll do 5 pesos, I'll still survive, because over 60 million liters a month, that's huge. And so whilst you do about 5 or 10 million, he is doing 60. And so he has the power to say, I can do this. But it doesn't help the other players in the industry sometimes. But again, from where we sit at COPEC, from the trotro driver's perspective, from the taxi driver, from the journalist perspective, from the Ghanaian that buys fuel products, I'm quite certain if prices went down, we'll be a lot more happier. But again, I've also had a little of interaction with people in GOIL. I've spoken to a couple of people in other oil marketing companies, and indications are that they would have loved to maintain prices if only they could afford the forex, that is the dollar CD variance. Unfortunately, they may not have the dollar as we speak, so they would probably have to go up a little bit tomorrow in order that they will be able to stay viable and be able to stay servicing all of us.
Let's get back again to this whole pricing dynamics for this whole oil marketing companies. And if I'm right, help me. We had government setting the prices, and then it came to deregulation, partial deregulation, allow these OMCs to every 2 weeks review their prices, right?
Exactly.
And some would say that, do you think that this whole plan of allowing the OMCs to set their prices has really helped?
You see, George, from the outside, anybody would think that deregulation is functional and full in Ghana. But
partial deregulation.
I would call it partial still, because what is really deregulated now is the margins of the OMCs. And so if you hear a discussion about GOIL, Vivo, Total, Engine, Petrosol, and the others, it is how much margins each of them is willing to forego. That is where they play within their pricing. But the other elements of pricing, right from the ex-refinery position to the government taxes thereon, all the way down to the margins, markings, markups, and all of them, everything seems fixed except the margins. And so the OMCs do not have a way to play with taxes. They cannot touch the taxes element. They are also unable to touch the ex-refinery components, which is more or less an international market price driven. And so a lot of the time when we discuss deregulation, I can say authoritatively that it only works within their margins. How much each of them is willing to throw away to stay competitive, to be able to stay price sensitive to Ghanaians. Anything other than this, there's no deregulation. The rest of the pricing, build, is almost cast in stone. You can't do anything about it.
Do you think that the best way forward to minimize these projected prices is still to take up the taxes? Because some are saying that we've seen the FX being fairly stable, prices of the international market has been also fairly stable, so we should have even expected some reduction. What is the way forward in dealing with these frequent hikes in petroleum products? Is it a taxes review?
George, we at COPEC have suggested a dual pricing mechanism. Dual pricing to the extent that when one part of your pricing goes up, some part of your pricing should come down or you should ease down. So dual pricing means that when XREF is up, right, find a way to ease down on your taxes a little bit so that you can be able to maintain or make, fuel prices a bit stable. Unfortunately, we have not been able to get to the dual pricing that we have said all along. When prices are down on international markets, what it means is that government revenue as far as our petroleum exports, don't forget we are an oil producing country. So government will lose revenue at Cape 3 Points and every other place that we produce oil from when prices or international market prices are down. So with that, government can enforce taxes at the pumps. But when prices are up internationally, it means that if government projected 65 and it's 70, government could be getting a windfall of some $5 on the international market, what we produce, which is even more than what we consume.
Okay.
So government may be getting more. And so we are saying, put in place a certain dual pricing mechanism that allows government, through the finance minister, to at least manage fuel prices when international market prices are up. You ease down on the taxes. When it's down, you can enforce the taxes. So what? As to balance or make, prices. And then again, work on your refinery, because you are an oil producing country. If you are retaining just 20% of what you produce and feed your refinery, whatever happens in Iran, US, the Straits of Hormuz and all of that, it would not affect you because you are producing locally, you are refining locally.
Duncan, looking into the crystal ball, finally, what does the outlook like for the price of petroleum products? Are we still going to see further highs going forward, or things are going to be fairly stable?
George, it will be difficult that the OMCs don't increase prices tomorrow. It is expected that it will go up between 2 to 3% across the pumps. What that means is that between 7 and 10 pesos may be added onto your pumps, and that is largely because these OMCs have held the fort. They have stayed prices even when international market prices have been negative, and I think that for once I would say this is fair.
And the outlook is also quite bleak in terms of more adjustments?
I do not expect that there will be adjustments in the first week of February because as we speak, the dollar is not as stable as you would want it, but it's better. International market prices are equally a bit stable, and so largely February should be a bit stable, but for tomorrow, the days after, it is certain that prices will go up across pumps. George.
Duncan Amwa is the Executive Secretary of the Petroleum Consumers Chamber of Petroleum Consumers. I thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate so much, and many times you get opportunity to join us to talk about fuel and development in the sector. Let's look at other stories. An economist, Professor Bob Boateng, is pushing for improved tax collections and blocking the loopholes to help deal with the revenue mobilization challenges. Now, his call is coming at a time that the IMF is proposing some increases in taxes and introduction of new ones to deal with the revenue shortfalls. Professor Bob Boateng tells Joy Business the new taxes definitely is not the way out for the country.
When we talk about taxes, I have a position that the government can still generate revenue without necessarily introducing new taxes. There are so many leakages in the system, which for me government needs to block. And if government is able to block, I think we will then be able to know that whether indeed we can introduce new tax. Because if you look at our tax system and so on, if you have a lot of leakages, people who are complying with the tax regime will continue to pay the taxes, and it becomes very burdensome for these people. I can identify a couple of areas, and I thought government has started doing something, but it seems that the pace is quite slow. The area of property tax is supposed to be in the hands of local authorities, and I think some metropolis, municipal areas don't have any business relying on government for resources. I don't think so. They can still generate a lot of funds from property taxes. It's just trying to put the measures in place. For instance, we don't even have our house numbering done well. So we will not be able to even, so for me, if we are able to digitize very well, so that whoever is in charge of revenue for the local authority can sit behind the computer and will be able to know the number of structures and their differentiation all over, then you'll be able to determine how much you are supposed to collect from every property owner, and nobody will be able to evade the tax. And digitization here means that you remove human interface, and therefore if I have to pay property tax, it's a matter of sitting in my office or in my room, pick my mobile phone, and straight away I pay, and it goes to the local authorities straight away. That can be done, but we still haven't done that. And there are so many house owners or home owners who love to pay, but nobody is coming to collect, because we need to put the structures in place. House numbering, get it digitized, then we can do that.
Now, total loans advanced by commercial banks ending October 2019 witnessed some significant increase. Now, this is when you compare that of the amount of cash that banks have invested in government securities as well as bonds. The revelation was contained in the latest Bank of Ghana report on the banking sector. Credit to businesses grew by 17.2% to 44 billion Ghana cedis, while investment in government securities went up by some 10% to 47 billion Ghana cedis. However, banking consultant Richard Ituahene said the situation could have been better if it had not been the challenges in the banking sector.
Have a terrible, slow process judiciary. If somebody defaults and you go to court, judge, it can take, when I was a bank, it took us as long as 5 years. In other jurisdictions like India, if you like check, if you default on a bank loan, it doesn't take more than 6 months. All the necessary mechanism is put to dispose of your assets. And because our laws and regulation are not helping the banks, we set commercial courts. Now the commercial courts delay more than even the traditional court. So if we want to help, and Dr. Allison said it one time, that the slow process of judiciary processes is affecting recovery, and therefore we have high non-performing. Therefore, we as a nation, we need to look at it. We need to look at our judicial processes. They are too slow for my liking. People default, you go there and they go and get adjournment, postponement, adjournment, and here and there. But anytime you default, it affects the liquidity and the solvency of the bank. Bank of Ghana at the moment, I think why they cannot put the stick too high is that after having capitalized it, if you want to take off the 7 to make it international best practice, some of the banks will have challenges with solvency and liquidity. So they are only also being cautious that after people have capitalized and you suddenly tell them that you're going to write them off, then you're going to have a challenge.
But some of these contractors, some of these service providers have said the government is indebted to them.
Yes.
And that's another high rate.
That is why people wouldn't lend money to the private contractors or the road contractors. I mean, if I sit down there and I can take 19% on government paper and I can take 25% on construction of road, I will go for government paper. Because it's a rational human. Because you see, in 2011, George, all these IMF stated that non-payment of debts is accumulating, and is accumulated from all those time to now. So it is something we have gone into it over the years. Especially we give projects without looking at the cash flow. Contractor, we go and do this, and nobody is coming to tell you where the cash flow is going to come. And he goes to his bankers finance it, but at the end of the day, he doesn't get paid.
Now, the country's development partners are somewhat buoyant about prospects for the economy in the coming months. The latest IMF report is projecting some higher growth rate compared to what government is expecting. We have details on this analysis and what it means for the economy going forward.
The IMF is, for instance, projecting a 7.5% end-of-year economic growth for the country this year. This is somewhat higher than the 6.8% the government itself is projecting to realize this year. The World Bank, in the new outlook about Ghana, had also projected some significant economic growth for the country. The development may be sending some good signals to investors about favorable economic outlook for the economy and how that could impact positively on attracting investment into the country. Some research agencies have also projected some exciting times for the economy this year in terms of economic activities picking up strongly this year. It is not clear for now what will be the drivers for this growth, whether it will be the traditional crude oil production or economic activities which will drive the expected growth. The strong pickup may also impact positively on revenue mobilization, a development that help contain the rising debt stock, which has hit 208 billion cedis, and getting the required funds for the necessary development.
Well, all too soon, we have to bring the program to an end. This has been Marketplace. It was live on the JoyNews channel on Multi TV as well as our various social media platforms. Remember that the debate still goes on about the economy and what about what these development partners are saying about us. I hope you have a good afternoon. I'm trying to enjoy mine whilst I step out for some lunch. Let's catch up somewhere in the capital in the week. Have a great day.